Today, we're going to talk about Glasgow. It's a city that was totally transformed by one revolution, the Industrial Revolution. And now, believe it or not, it's facing a completely different one, all thanks to climate change. It is an absolutely incredible story of pollution, a surprising comeback, and a future that's really hanging in the balance. So when you think of Glasgow, what comes to mind? Probably cool, cloudy, maybe a bit damp. The Scots have a perfect word for it, draish. But here's the thing, the data is starting to tell a totally new story. The city's future is being rewritten by the climate, and it's pointing towards something that sounds, well, nothing like Glasgow. Hotter, drier, and way more extreme.
To really get a handle on where Glasgow is going, we first have to look back at where it's been. Our story starts when the city became this powerhouse, the industrial heart of an empire. But that progress, it came at a really devastating cost to the environment. And the River Clyde, the city's main artery, it tells you everything you need to know. What kicked off as an industrial boom in the 18th century quickly turned into just a flood of pollution. By 1927, it was official. The Clyde was the most polluted river in all of Scotland. And by the middle of the 20th century, the whole ecosystem just collapsed. We're talking iconic species like Atlantic salmon, gone. Completely vanished.
I mean, just let that sink in for a second. Essentially dead. This wasn't just a river that was a little bit sick. People were describing it as an aquatic wasteland, a toxic soup where only the absolute toughest little organisms could even hope to survive. Everything else was just gone.
But here's where the story takes this amazing turn. As all that heavy industry started to fade away and new environmental rules kicked in, something pretty incredible began to happen. Nature, totally against the odds, started to take the city back.
And this is the perfect symbol of that comeback. In the early 1980s, the impossible happened. Atlantic salmon were spotted leaping in the Clyde again, for the first time in over 100 years. Can you imagine? Their return was this powerful, living sign that all those decades of cleanup were actually working. The river was, well, it was breathing again.
And the comeback wasn't just in the water. On land, the ruins of old factories and industrial sites were becoming these accidental nature preserves. They're called open mosaic habitats, and they're these really unique ecosystems that just spring up on old derelict land. You get this mix of rubble, bare ground, and wildflowers, and it turns out that's the perfect home for all sorts of rare insects and other wildlife.
So what you have now is a Glasgow that's, well, it's surprisingly green. Over 20% of the city is green space. Surveys have found 91 different species of birds there. And in what has to be one of the greatest comebacks in history, otters. Otters are now a regular sight, hunting along the very same river that was once declared dead. It's just amazing.
Okay, so things are looking up, right? The river's alive, otters are back, but just as Glasgow's ecosystem has fought its way back from the brink, a new, much bigger threat has shown up. And this is Act 3, the gathering storm of global climate change. And the hard data? It shows it's already here. And listen, this isn't some far-off problem for our grandkids. Scotland has already warmed by a full degree Celsius, just in the last decade. That might not sound like a huge number, but trust me, for an ecosystem that's just getting back on its feet, it is a profound shock. The whole baseline is shifting, right now.
And all that warming is basically scrambling the city's weather patterns. The biggest change for Glasgow really boils down to this. Its winters are getting a whole lot wetter, and its summers are getting a whole lot drier. And by the 2080s, that shift could get really extreme. We're talking about winters with over 50% more rain. Just imagine the flooding. And at the same time, summers with nearly 50% less rain. So you've got this wild paradox, the threat of drought in one of the rainiest cities in Europe.
And then there's the heat. A city that historically had pretty much zero heat wave days could be looking at 50 of them per decade by the 2070s. Now think about that. This is a city where the buildings were all designed to keep heat in, not let it out. This is a massive challenge.
So you put all that together, and what do you get? You get this triple threat. You've got winter floods, you've got summer heat stress, and then the biggest paradox of all, the risk of running out of water in a city that's famous for rain. And that brings us to our final act. Every bit of Glasgow's hard-won ecological recovery is now on the line, facing this new climate revolution. The city is really standing at a crossroads with two very, very different futures ahead of it. So let's break down this choice, because it's pretty stark.
On one hand, you have a low-resilience future. That's all about gray infrastructure, concrete walls, bigger pipes, paving over those vital habitats. On the other hand, you've got a high-resilience future. This one uses nature-based solutions. That basically means letting nature do the heavy lifting, restoring wetlands, creating green corridors. It's an approach that not only handles flood risk, but also boosts the very biodiversity the city fought so hard to get back.
And if you want a perfect living symbol for this whole struggle, just look at the Argyle Street ash. This one tree is the definition of resilience. It survived the Blitz during World War II. But today, it's facing this new, silent enemy, a disease called ash dieback, which is being made way worse by the stress of a changing climate. Its fate really mirrors the fate of the city's entire ecosystem.
And the city's own experts aren't pulling any punches here. This quote from Glasgow's own climate strategy says it all. It calls for nothing less than a revolution in planning. This isn't about making a few small tweaks. It's about fundamentally rethinking how the entire city lives with nature and water.
Which brings us right back to our central question. Glasgow was literally forged in the fire of the Industrial Revolution, a revolution that poisoned its own home. Now it's staring down the barrel of the climate revolution. So, can this city, with its incredible story of recovery, rise up and meet this new challenge? Well, the next few decades are going to tell us the answer.